Classic, presented by AMF 10-pin bowling centres.
From the Logan City Lanes in sunny Queensland, the 9 Network presents the 1985 Goldpin Coca Cola Classic. Your commentators, John McCoy and Steve Mackey.
And good afternoon and welcome to the Logan City Lanes, which are situated between Brisbane and the beautiful Gold Coast here in Queensland, for the 1985 Coca-Cola 10-pin bowling classic. We brought together some of the finest male and female bowlers in Australia today for this tournament, and as well as the prize money for the tournament itself, if any bowler is able to bowl a perfect game of 300, well, with the compliments of Goldpin Lanes and also Coca-Cola, he or she will be taking away $5,000. Joining me for commentary throughout the tournament is Steve Mackey, former Australian champion, in fact 4 times Australian champion. And Steve, our first game today between Peter Lepp and Terry Wenban should be a good one.
Yes, it should be. Terry, one of the most accomplished bowlers, and has been named the 1985 Australian Bowler of the Year. He's won 6 tournaments this year, and he won one of them here at this centre.
Peter Lepp is 45 years of age. He's a bank clerk. His home lanes are the Clayfield lanes on the north side of Brisbane. He's been bowling for some 20 years, was the runner-up in the Queensland Masters in 1985, and was also a runner-up in that same tournament back in 1982, and one of the state's most experienced bowlers. Peter, you're meeting an experienced bowler from Sydney. Is there any such thing as hometown advantage for you?
Well, first of all, we have the crowd behind us most of the time, and for Terry, he's a one terrific bowler, and I just hope I can do well against him.
So Peter Lepp to bowl the opening frame of the Coca-Cola Classic for 1985. And leaving just the 1 pin standing, which should give him little trouble in picking up his spare in the opening frame.
Yes, he took a big gulp before he took off too. He's quite a nervous man. Even though he's been bowling this long, 20 years, he has never appeared on television before.
So this to give him his spare. And successfully. Steve, we might just explain, for those who have never before had any interest in 10-pin bowling, exactly how the scoring system operates.
Well, right there is a spare, and a spare is achieved when all the pins are brought down in 2 balls. You're allowed 2 balls each frame. That spare of Peter's will count 10 plus what he gets on his next 1 shot. Now, Terry is up, and we'll explain the strike.
Well, almost a strike.
Now, if that had been a strike counts 10 pins plus what the bowler gets on the next 2 balls. So spares are 10 plus the next 1 shot, strikes are 10 plus the next 2. Everything else is just scored as bowled.
And as we said, if any bowler is able to bowl a perfect bowl, that is 12 strikes in a row, which is the perfect game of 300. He or she will take away $5,000.
Well, they're not going to do it in this game. They both open up with spares, but Terry Wenban will enjoy watching him bowl. The Australian Bowler of the Year, qualified in 6th place. For him to win this tournament and the first prize of $1,000, he's going to have to go all the way up this step ladder. He's going to have to knock off 6 opponents, and he's just the sort of guy that can do it. He's very, very good in the clutch situation, in the pressure situation. Has not lost very many finals when he's been in them, and certainly the most accomplished Australian male bowler of 1985.
And there's the first strike of the tournament. Terry Wenban in the 2nd frame gets the first strike of the Coca-Cola Classic.
Yes, and what a strike it was. Buried deep into the 1-3 pocket. Good crowd reaction there. They liked it when he let it go.
So the pressure goes back onto Peter Lepp.
Yes, Peter, a popular bowler here in Brisbane. He's been on the committees of a number of bowling clubs and tournament committees and so on. And he's getting a good razz from the crowd. But not enough to bring that 10-pin down, and he's left the same pin that Terry had to go for a moment ago.
So Peter to try and get his spare in the second frame. At the end of the first frame, Terry Wenban held a lead of 1 stroke, but of course he has that strike in the second to build on. Oh, and that's a bad miss by Peter Lepp. Not to pick up that single pin for the spare.
Yes, he seemed to rush the shot there. He got up to the foul line to let the ball go at 100 miles an hour. He should have taken his time. That's the best thing to do under pressure, is to try and relax, take some deep breaths, and he just rushed up at that one.
So he moves over to lane 13 to start his third frame. Oh, and he's left himself with a nasty split to try and pick up the spare here.
Yes, the baby split. The pins numbered 3 and 10. There's just enough room for the ball to get between them, but Peter, as most men bowlers do, bowls the heavyweight 16-pound ball, and this has to have pinpoint accuracy to get this spare.
He's got to get it almost between the two of them.
He's done it.
And he's done it perfectly.
Yes, we'll have another look at that one. Ball went right in between the 2 pins. Couldn't have been better placed. And despite the heavyweight 16-pound ball, it still bounced off that front pin. Let's have a look at it again. Well, Wenban now, strike working in the second frame. Great stance. Excellent concentration. Very fluent follow through. And the excellent timing and so on that he displays there, John, possibly a legacy of his surfboard riding days. You need good timing for that.
So Terry...
Get your body into bowling.
At the end of the second frame, the lead was 22 pins to Terry Wenban.
Yes, a handy lead, and Peter Lepp a little bit high on the nose that time. We saw it dive in at the end.
So Peter to attempt to pick up the spare.
No problems. Well, joining us in the commentary for the men's matches is the editor of the Pin Action Bowling magazine, himself a former National All-Star Champion of Australia, Bob Cook from Gosford in New South Wales. Bob, Terry Wenban's looking rather good.
Yes, Steve. Wenban, of course, would be the most proficient pressure bowler in the country. Terry, excellent when the chips are down, as he showed last year when he bowled the 279 against Queensland captain Tom Curry to win the Grand Prix.
Well, his opponent not doing it easily here. That pin rocked, though, but refused to go. So Peter Lepp, 9, 9, 8, and 9, and a 9. 4 9s out of 5 frames. That's the sign of a nervous bowler.
Peter working to pick up the spare, and he does.
Yes, he holds the ball very high, does Peter Lepp. Terry Wenban, a bowler that holds it quite low in his stance. We'll have a look at Terry's stance and the way he pushes the ball away. But look at the concentration. He's looking out on the lane there. He's taking a few deep breaths, drying his hand off. There's another breath. Holding it low. Totally relaxed before he takes off. And this looks good. Not good enough.
Steve probably just should point out that in their run-up and delivery, he'd be keeping his eyes not on the pins, as most people would probably think, but on actually the points on the lane in front of him.
Yes, they're called arrows or darts, and they're about 16 feet out from the release point. And Terry is looking down at those now and is trying to throw that ball right over one of those arrows, and at this stage he's bowling it in between the second and third arrow.
And they're the spots, and then the arrows just coming into view now, which is where he would aim at. And of course, the other thing we should point out is that the lanes themselves are oiled each day, but they can dry out, and that can cause a variance in the delivery, particularly so in a televised series where the television lights can just dry that oil up so much quicker.
Yes, and Terry would be aware of that. A bowler of his ability would be totally cognizant of that fact, and he'd be making adjustments throughout the game. The way he'd be making adjustments is perhaps moving a couple of boards further to the left, or even angling his feet slightly differently. But, well, we just saw a replay of that last shot of his. What a ball it was to leave that 7-pin. And he's looking good.
So Terry picks up his spare in the 6th frame. At the end of the 4th frame, Terry Wenban had a lead of 33 pins over Peter Lepp. Peter coming up now to bowl his 6th frame.
And this is match play style, of course, 2 frames at a time while the opponent sits down and watches, and that makes it quite difficult, particularly if your opponent gets 2 strikes in a row while you're sitting on the bench. You're powerless to do anything about it. Sort of like waiting for the guns to go off in front of the firing squad, I guess. But, of course, the opposite can happen if the opponent gets up and opens 2 frames. That gives you a second life, and you're able to breathe easy down there.
So Peter hasn't bowled a strike so far in the game, but again picks up the spare in the 6th.
Yes, I said a moment ago about all the 9s that Peter's had, and that's the sign of a nervous bowler. He seems to be getting up very, very quickly. He's changing balls in between strikes and spare shots. And, well, he took a little bit more time that time, but let's see how it goes. He'd love a strike.
But it's not to be. In the men's competition, we have 7 players in the tournament, with the winner to take away $1,000, and the prize money going down to number 7, who will get $350. And 5 ladies have qualified for the women's final, the winner receiving $500, and the 5th place getter $150. We'll just explain in a moment how, in fact, those players reached this televised final, as the spare picked up by Peter Lepp in the 7th frame. Steve, the qualifying tournaments have been held at the Goldpin centres throughout southeast Queensland over the last couple of months.
Yes, and they received pretty good entries too. We had more than 1,500 qualifying attempts in the 13 centres, and these finalists have come through the mill. We have 2 invited bowlers, Terry Wenban and Cheryl Munson, who are both the Australian Bowlers of the Year for 1985, both coincidentally from Sydney. And the seedings in the men's game, the winner of this match tonight will go on to meet Ian Hughes of the Gold Coast, a former Sydney bowler and quite an accomplished man.
Well, at the end of the 6th frame, the lead for Terry Wenban was 34 pins, but of course he has that strike to build on in the 7th as he moves over to lane 13 to bowl the 8th frame.
Bowled a very solid game so far.
Again looking good. Perfect.
And let's get a comment from Bob Cook on that. Bob, a lot of strikes for Terry Wenban and none for Peter Lepp. What's the difference?
Wenban, Steve, showing the advantage of the release. He lets the ball go extremely well, gets the ball to roll a lot more than Peter does. In fact, Terry is so accomplished at that part of the game that when one of the visiting American professionals was here, he said Wenban would be probably the only Australian to do well on the professional circuit in America.
And the pressure right on Peter Lepp as he leaves himself that very difficult split to pick up his spare.
Yes, and what Bob said about Terry Wenban certainly speaks well for Wenban's ability. He's learnt the game in Australia, although he has been to America once for a short tour. And Peter Lepp's going to stay in 7th place, I'm afraid. I can't see him getting out of this one. Terry Wenban has the opportunity here to bowl a game of 258, which would be an enormous performance. And Peter Lepp's best total, if he gets 4 strikes in a row, is going to be 190. He hasn't had any yet. So to get 4 would be a tall order.
And there's his first. Took a long time in coming, and isn't he delighted?
And so's the crowd. And Peter's wife, Joan, who'll be participating in the ladies' division in a couple of programs' time, giving her husband a few words of encouragement after that pin-crashing strike. Well, Terry Wenban now up in the foundation frame, the 9th frame. All good bowlers like to get a strike in this one. Let's see if he can do it again. Oh, dearie. Oh, dearie me.
Well,
unbelievable.
it just goes to show, doesn't it? You can be so hot, and then the next moment so cold. He can't believe it. He's not... All he wants to do is see the lane swallow, just open up and swallow him.
Yes, and he's laughing. He just can't believe it. Cannot believe it. He hit his ankle. In fact, as a junior bowler, I remember Terry used to hit his ankle quite a lot. He's got an outside-in swing in his arm swing. Let's see if he can get the spare. Be good effort if he does. Oh, what a spare.
What a comeback.
Well, we won't see that too often on national television. A miss in the 9th frame, the top of the 9th frame, and then, of course, knocking them all over. And that is only a spare, ladies and gentlemen. You do not score a strike when you get them all over in the second shot.
No, it's not very often you get a spare with a ball like that.
Well,
but I suppose by the same token, Steve, for all of the social 10-pin bowlers at home, it would give them confidence to know that even the best can do that.
Yes, and the very best too, the very best this year. Well, it's lucky for Terry that it wasn't a close match, because that would have been extremely costly. That's cost him about 20 or 30 pins potentially. And of course, coming back after a gutter ball spare is not easy. And Terry pulled the ball high that time. He's left 4 in the corner. A nasty cluster too, the pin numbers 3, 6, 9 and 10 in the triangle. Let's see if he can cover the spare. Tough one. Well, it's a good game all the same. It's a 203. Nice one to open our TV tournament with. And Peter Lepp, the best he can do is 190. So Terry Wenban goes on to meet Ian Hughes, former Sydney opponents, in the next men's match in our next program.
And again, pretty difficult split he's left himself. The sleeper.
Terry Wenban, 203. Well, that game could have been anything. We were talking about a 258 before he bowled that gutter ball, and he dropped 55 pins. He's still having a bit of a chuckle over it. But Peter Lepp now hoping to get this spare in the 10th and give himself a 170 game. No disgrace first time on television, but he's missed that one too, and he'd be very disappointed with that. 158.
It's a pretty hard spare to pick up, that last one, with the 2 pins virtually one covering the other. So 203 to Terry Wenban, the winner by 45 pins over Peter Lepp, who finishes with 158. So Terry Wenban goes into the next round of the competition to play Ian Hughes of the Gold Coast.